hello, everybody, and welcome to our final piece of coverage from the second day of PSIfest 2023 here in Charlottesville, Virginia. We are here right now with Maureen Seaberg, author of the brand new book, literally hot off the presses, folks, Fearfully and Wonderfully Made. How are you doing?
I'm well.
Welcome.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking with you outside.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit, because you actually write about the senses. You were an investigative journalist and actively write about the senses that we have in our body. What is it that brought you to the world of remote viewing, Maureen?
I think remote viewing or remote sensing, really, because remote viewers use all of their senses, don't they? I think it's the cutting edge of sensory science. So I want to know all about it. And I find it fascinating. Well,
and as somebody who's written many articles into Psychology Today, things like that, like you're out there in the scientific world talking about the brain and how it senses things, how it relates things. How did you get into that field to begin with?
Well, believe it or not, I was a crime reporter for the New York Times and the Daily News and other places first. And I am a sensory outlier. I am a polysynesthete. I have many synesthesias. Oh. And I'm also one of 3 American women identified to have the 4th cone class for color perception in my eyes.
Wow.
I'm something called a tetrachromat. Yes.
You're like a parrot.
I'm absolutely like a bird.
You can UV and IR.
Well, I don't
wild.
see exactly the same as birds, but I see a lot the way they do, a huge amount.
Yeah, because their color range is slightly different than ours. It's kind of like the idea, I'm an AV technician, as I told you. A few years ago, Samsung put out on the market the first TV with 4 color chips.
Amazing.
Red, green, blue, and yellow.
Yellow was the new.
And it made a whole new millions of colors.
Yes, especially watching the nature programs, things that are outside. Because as a tetrachromat, I can tell you that it's exactly like Oz. Indoor, most of the colors, manufactured goods, the wallpaper, this frame.
Things under artificial light.
That, and also things made by people with 3 cone classes, 4 people with 3 cone classes. But nature doesn't follow those rules. Yeah. So I literally open the door and it's more Oz-like when I step outside.
Wow. Yeah.
So we're looking at, as a sensory outlier, I wanted to know about the realm, and I thought maybe I can be of service in this way as well, as an investigative reporter. Well, and look at this for other people, not just me.
Sure, and especially as an investigative reporter who has written once again many times about senses, the way the brain works, the way the brain perceives things. It really does give you a unique insight to the field of remote viewing.
I hope so. So I'll be presenting on new sensory potentials. It's a golden era in perceptual laboratories right now because they're awash in funding for AI, robotics, and so forth. But every time scientists try to measure human potential to create sentience, match or best our sentience in artificial realms, they are finding we are orders of magnitude more powerful than they used to know. Yeah. So for the longest time, they thought we could smell 10,000 scents. That's a lot. I don't even know if I could name 10,000 scents.
I'd say most people couldn't name 100.
Well, do you know how much it actually is?
Probably more in the order of 100,000.
It's a trillion.
Wow.
And some say it's infinite. And they have actually we beat some dogs and rodents in laboratory settings. Wow. The fact that we are not good smellers is a 19th century Victorian myth. Huh. And they have now put human beings on scent trails like hounds to see if they can follow them. They can.
Wow.
So we are super predators. We
Yes, we
are
are.
the technology. We are soft tissue, high technology. No machine, no other animal can match us. So if you take these new potentials and you put it in front of a bunch of people who know how to remote sense, I'm hoping there are applications for the field.
Sure, absolutely. And as hopefully as many applications in the field as there are for the field of remote viewing in general, because the applications are far and wide. They're huge. It's
Really?
phenomenal. I mean, I was one of the sponsors, one of the co-sponsors of the event is a company that uses remote viewing to help do city planning and help find future technologies to make cleaner electricity and things like that.
That's amazing.
That's a whole new world. Like you're saying, it's a world of
It is a
possibilities.
whole new
that's
world,
out
and
there.
it's so elegant to just use your own body to
Yeah.
solve something. It's clean. You don't need a lot of add-ons, bells and whistles.
Yeah.
It's you.
Exactly.
I'll give you an example from the
Please.
traditional realm. There is a woman named Joy Milne in Scotland. She's a retired nurse who thought her husband started to smell different. Even when he was freshly showered, she was like, there's something wrong. 6 years later, he developed Parkinson's disease. She started going to support meetings for other families. They all smelled musky like her husband. So she raised an alarm, and now, with researchers from the University of Manchester, she has identified molecular biomarkers in the sebum on the skin, usually in the
Wow,
back.
yeah, the oils that
The
come
oils,
off of our skin.
yes. And they now have a swab test that can diagnose Parkinson's 10 years early,
What?
which is the closest thing to
How
a
have
cure
I not?
as you
I
can get.
post news like this all day long. How did this miss my radar?
Go
Oh my
for
God!
it. So, not only that,
Wow.
she can smell COVID. Do you want to know what COVID smells like? Do people want to know?
Oranges or bats? No.
Bats. No, it smells like the Wuhan lab. No, it actually smells like apple cider and infection combined.
Ooh.
So now she's working on swab tests for that. She can smell cancer and tuberculosis.
Wow. And of course, it has been shown numerous times that there are dogs that can sense cancer,
Oh,
smell
yes.
cancer, smell illnesses, things like that. And once again,
And
we have
we-
always put that to the fact of a dog has a smell palate a million times more sensitive than ours.
That's what we
not,
think.
Not stronger, but more sensitive.
Well, that's
You
what we
know,
thought.
and-
So this started because
Yeah.
a neuroanatomist in the 19th century named Paul Broca theorized incorrectly that humans have small olfactory bulbs, the nerve center where we smell things.
Yeah.
In absolute terms, in terms of comparison to the rest of our body, our environment, that is just not true. But it caught on. It caught
Sure,
on back
sure.
in the day.
Yeah.
Even Sigmund Freud
So did bad
got
humors.
into it. Bad humors. There you go. And so it was all part of the zeitgeist at the
Yeah.
time. People were a little puritanical.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want us to be like the rest of the animal kingdom. We were something apart, right? we weren't sensual, God forbid.
We were just looking at the work of Charles Darwin and separating ourselves from the animal kingdom, things like that.
Beautiful context you just provided. But now we know better. We know better. And I like to say, if you don't believe we're super predators, read the headlines.
Well, that's where our eyes are. Mm-hmm. Our eyes, I mean,
They're in front. They're
predators
not on the
only have
side.
forward-facing eyes.
They're
Prey only
not on
has
the
it on the side
side.
to look for the predators. So
Exactly.
that's why your ears face forward, is so we can zero in on a target.
Yeah, and our ears are also, our hearing is even more powerful than our eyes.
Oh, I
Even
as an
more
audio
powerful.
engineer, I will attest to that. I
Yeah.
will and more than your eyes and your nose, your ears can be trained.
Wow,
Like
I would believe that.
remarkably so. You can act. I mean, there are numerous CDs, things like that out there for audio engineers like me, where you literally learn to recognize a frequency.
Oh, that's
by tone.
amazing.
Like, oh yeah, that's 225. Bring that down in the EQ. Being able to identify the frequency by hearing it. That's how deeply you can be trained with your ears. And it's remarkable. Our senses are tied to so many centers in our brain. So many centers are activated by our sensors, especially senses of smell, things like that.
Smell goes straight to memory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, though, I've trained these and these for audio and video over the last 30 years. Nothing strikes me faster than a smell. If I smell Zippo fluid, I immediately see my grandfather. Immediately. Even when I first put oil in a pan and throw flour in it and start cooking a roux, I see my grandmother. Like the smell of a cooking roux immediately takes me to her kitchen. Like I am transported. And it's interesting to know that so much of our life is lived autonomically, Maureen. We go through life in a state of hypnosis.
We do.
Our brain wants us to operate in that state. It wants us to autonomically operate so it can be free to think and do higher order things.
Right?
Do higher order things. Even stuff like remote viewing would be more apt for your brain to want to do than for it to think about you breathing.
Yeah. That makes good sense, doesn't it?
Because that's one of those, once you're out and they've slapped you and you've got oxygen going through you, your body just does it.
Yeah.
And you can try to think to stop it. Your body will make you restart it.
So
it will make you want to breathe. So, yeah, it wants to just put that on autopilot.
Yes.
I mean, how frequently do we drive home from work or drive to a relative's house and just pass 18 exits on the road and go, oh, wow, I'm almost there already.
Hypnotized. Completely hypnotized by the road.
Yeah.
In a trance state.
Yeah.
You know what else is interesting? Do you know how we always say, oh, he's very sensitive, and we're referring to emotions? Well,
he might just be very sensitive to you and your frequencies.
Exactly.
You may not smell right to him.
See that? But what's interesting is they found our senses, particularly our sense of smell, but all our senses, are tied to emotion through the limbic brain. So here we are saying sensitive, meaning emotion, but it's all of it. And it's actually considered verbal abuse to call someone too sensitive now.
I wouldn't deny that.
I know we can take it too far sometimes, but I agree with that one.
That's a good one. I like it.
Because too many people get shut down who are very exquisitely sensitive people who should be encouraged.
Absolutely. I'm an anxiety sufferer. When I work events as a corporate AV technician, I compare myself to a horse with blinders doing his job.
Wow.
Pulling a cart on a cobblestone street. The people passing by don't bother him, whatever. His focus is ahead on what he's doing. If I go to that same convention with no focus, like I'm going there to do interviews, something like that, it can become a state of anxiety for me.
I understand. You have so many moving parts, and I've watched this booth. I've watched this space. You have worked nonstop.
Thank you.
So it's amazing what you do.
And that's part of the reason why I work nonstop.
Yeah, you get it
Maureen,
done.
Well, not just that. It's the fact of it keeps me calm and engaged in the event and not, wow, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. There's so much going on. My tech soothes me. It puts me in a calming place to focus my energy.
Thank you for soothing me and doing such a good interview. I'm really grateful.
You know, the same way that we go through life in very much a state of autonomic hypnosis, Maureen, it's hard for us to accept positive feedback in the world. It's hard for us to not just receive it, but hold it and keep it and consider it better than the negative feedback that we get, which our brains are wired since we became the super predators to survive.
Yes.
Things like that, like negative reinforcement, can be good for your brain. It helps us learn fast. We learn real fast. Fire burns.
Yes, fire burns.
You learn that faster than you do how to rub sticks together and keep warm and make food. Your body will remember, wow, that was painful.
Yeah.
A whole lot faster than it will
Yeah.
something useful. And we're wired that way. So it's hard for us in the society that we live in with the mass amount of information literally coming at us now. It's no longer the fact of we had to hop on a bike and go across town and look through a card catalog or a microfiche. We no longer have to search out the information. It's put upon us now. And that can unstabilize us. That can really affect a lot of
very challenging.
things.
It's challenging in terms of you can overstimulate the senses too.
Exactly.
So I recommend in the book I've just written that people get out into nature, people meditate, people remove themselves from the cacophony when they can.
You've got to try to unplug. You've got to. For a while, and I should probably try to redo it. For a while, I practiced Black Sabbath. And that was the idea that whatever day you consider Sabbath, folks, no tech. No tech. Put the phone away. Cut the TV off.
That's a great idea.
Turn off the radio. Go read a book.
Yeah,
go
restore
fishing.
yourself.
Do something. Just be with each other. Sit and have a conversation. Play a game of chess. We have forgotten this connectivity that we all have. And like you said, we are overstimulated.
Yes.
Our senses are overwrought in our modern society, and it makes it harder to connect. It can make it harder to connect, and it can make it harder to build that connection of empathy with your common man.
Yeah, you feel disconnected,
Now,
unfortunately.
When it comes to senses, when it comes to our brains, overstimulation, what can we do aside from just unplugging? What can we do on the daily to kind of help relieve our brains from some of this, Maureen?
Get outdoors. So the EPA did a study that showed North Americans and Europeans are spending 90% of their lives indoors, which is, it dulls the senses.
Yeah.
It's very bad for us.
Yep.
On the contrary, or by contrast, scientists studied Malaysian hunter-gatherers to see how their senses work. They're able to identify more smells than us,
Yep.
more colors than us,
Yes.
more everything.
Yeah.
And I know we are not all in the position to live that lifestyle, nor should we,
Sure.
but their superiority to us in that way should be a clarion call to get outside.
And that's something that we talk about on this show regularly, Maureen. And you don't even have to go back to ancient civilizations. Like I said a minute ago, I'm almost 50. You could go back to my grandfather in rural Louisiana back in the early 1900s, who maybe had a fat lamp. When it became night, it's night.
Yeah,
And
it was really nice.
we had a different connection to the world around us. Our great-grandparents didn't necessarily need a farmer's almanac to know by the world around them when to put seed in the ground.
That's right.
They knew, like, oh, wow, that's the third cold snap in a row. I better get busy putting the peas down.
Yeah.
We had a connection to that we do not have anymore. There are a few people out there that still have it, like you're saying. Granted, that is very much in the Western world, that we are overwrought in this way. And yeah, without that connection to what intrinsically makes us, like not many people realize that when you're a baby, that soft spot on your head goes straight to your pineal gland. Like that is light going straight to your pineal gland, directly to it. Great for healing, growing, all kinds of things. Eventually, that spot comes together. And yeah, when you start studying people, once again, who live inside, do things inside regularly, that's when you start seeing things like seasonal affective disorder. where you're deprived of daylight.
Yes.
That's where you start seeing cases of longer depression, things like that, because you're not active. You're not doing what our body has been programmed for millennia to do, Maureen. We have never been programmed for this.
I agree.
Ever. Our biology was not programmed to just sit.
Nope.
It wasn't programmed for that. It was programmed to interact, to hunt, to gather, to be interactive with the world around us. Like you said, those people in the woods have a sharper sense of hearing. They're able to identify things at a further distance. They're able to smell animals that they hunt, things like that. And ask any hunter out there, like, they'll tell you, like, yeah, you can tell when the deer are around. You can smell them. Like, I am an avid herpophile. I love reptiles. There is a distinct smell of snake.
Oh, yeah.
There's a distinct smell of what the musk of certain snakes smell like. And if you're out and you smell that musk, you know, oh, wow, yeah, there may be some garter snakes around, or there may be a water moccasin.
Be careful.
So, yeah, you know, you can learn to identify that animal's in the area just by the smell. And it's not like a skunk or something like that. It's not that pungent. It's very subtle. But it's there. It's there. And if you're trained to find it and trained to it and in tune with it, it's remarkable what you can do. Now, when it comes to this research, especially when it comes to senses, things like that, like right now, I just posted an article today about they're looking at the provability, they're looking at all the data right now, but they may have very well found a fifth force of nature in muons and the way things move. Where do you see the research in sensory going?
Yeah, so this
now?
is
What's the future of the work of sensory science?
This is coincidentally or not, a very interesting tie-in to what you just brought up. Now that they know we can see a single photon with our naked eyes, they're having people see, if they can, superposition and entanglement. And will they confirm long-held theories, or will they rewrite the book on physics?
Yeah. No, precisely. And once again, I have been hammering home for months now. Don't forget, everybody, we now have proved quantum entanglement. That won the Nobel Prize through peer-reviewed study, everything else. Particles can be influenced at a distance by another particle. Now, that's correlation to remote viewing, to everything. It's not the causation.
Right.
But
correlation,
that's some pretty big correlation.
It is pretty big.
Pretty big correlation. And when you're talking about a lot of things, especially with our senses, that's right there with quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, many of the senses are on that scale. We know, we hear things with a diameter smaller than an atom.
Yeah.
And again, seeing single photons.
Yeah.
So that's how refined.
And
that's why we named the book Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, because it is just extraordinary what the human body is capable of.
And what the human mind is capable of. It is an organic transducer. It's amazing. It's a big fat-celled radio receiver is what it is. We are like walking vacuum tubes. And when you consider that possibility, when you think about the fact that we can not only radiate information, but take in information via a distance. You know, we've all had that feeling when we walk into a room that something just kind of squirrels in our gut. And we're like, wow, something just doesn't sit right. Maybe listen to that next time.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
That's a sense. That's still a sense of touch.
Yeah.
You know, like if you touch something sharp and it hurt you, would you keep your hand there?
I know what you're saying.
And we've been taught, not only with science, but with academia, if it's not in this box, it isn't.
Yeah.
You know, and That to me is dangerous science.
It is.
That to me is
And
dangerous science.
remote sensors are observing. It is observable science. So I hope the
Give
field
us an
continues
example
to grow.
of that observable science when it comes to remote sensing.
Well, for example, how about Joe McMoneagle knowing where Skylab would fall? And then it does.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Observable.
Without actively knowing its declination trajectory and speed and everything else. And even then, NASA gives an area, not a location. Here's this 10-mile swath that
or
we're
an
looking
ocean.
at.
They say it'll be that ocean.
Yeah.
What was it? The Indian Ocean,
Well,
I think?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe within 100 miles of that island or something. It wasn't like Joe's prediction of it'll be right here.
Yeah.
You
it
know?
was much closer than that.
Yeah. Pretty phenomenal. Let everybody know, Maureen, where they can go to get your new book, Fearfully
Yeah, so
Wonderfully
it's available wherever books are sold.
Well,
And it just came out Tuesday. So.
I know it is so hot off. As soon as Michael said that, I was like, well, that's the first book that needs to go in my stack then if it's hot off the press.
Thank
and
you
I've been
so
thumbing
much.
through it. It's so remarkable. So
Thank
awesome.
you.
Go by, check this out, folks. This will, of course, be added to the Curious Realm store. CuriousRealm.com/store is where you can find all of the books from our guests. That's where you can find all of the tools that we talk about for paranormal research. Make sure to stop on by CuriousRealm.com. Everybody, like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. That wraps us for our second day of coverage here at PSIfest 2023 in Charlottesville, Virginia, with the International Remote Viewing Association and Monroe Institute. We will be back tomorrow for our final bit of coverage. Stay tuned right after these messages for all of that, folks.